Hello, everybody. So just trying to make sure I got everything connected here. Looks like we're good. I'd like to welcome you guys to this Paint with Me. And what we're going to be doing today is the Grinch. So first, I just have to say thank you for everyone that has supported me this month on Patreon, and just my entire community. Every one of you is awesome, and I know that I had quite a few people in my Patreon group that was asking for me to do a live paint with me. So, and actually in my last live stream I did with the Inspired folks, a few people asked there too. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting this Grinch. So I actually already have all of the files of where you can get this in the description of the video, and also all of the resources that I'm going to be using that is mine. And later on, and I can put on more, like after we get through this, if I use anything else, I can put that in the description afterwards. So what we're going to do is first, I'm going to kind of go over some of the tools that I'm going to be using for this video. So the first thing is obviously we're going to be using paints. So like I've got like a bunch of different greens, reds, and whites that we're going to be using. And I also have a yellow and then a red. And that's going to really cover it, just those main colors, because with the Grinch's face is green, we got white for the Santa hat and the red for the Santa suit. And if you see, let me just get this in focus here, if you guys can see it. We've got this guy. So I have already primed him and he is ready for paint. And if you see, it was actually red filament. And I actually printed this on my Bambu X1 carbon at this super fine quality at 8.08 millimeters a layer height. And for this, I'm going to be using some dry brushes, a few like detail brushes when we get into the details, but that's going to be the very last thing. Then what I'm going to be using is my texture boards, because I've got two different ones I'm going to be using. And what else? I've got some distilled water. Then I'm going to be using my new paint log. So for those of you that are not aware, I just created these 3D printing and painting logbooks for those OCD people out there. And this is something that I really like. And that's why I made it, because essentially you can actually keep track of all of the stuff through your 3D print. And also on the other side, you can keep track of all the colors that you're using. So if you ever want to go back to it or trying to figure out what color you used, this is really where it's at, to where you can put a little bit of paint on there and then write down what it is. So that's what I'm going to be using here to keep track of what I'm using. So the other thing is, if you're one of those people that just want a paint logbook, I created just a painting logbook and also just a 3D printing logbook. So these are really nice just because they're spiral bound. You can flip them and just let them set. And I have enjoyed mine so far because I have went through a few trial runs to design the right kind of thing. And a spiral bound is just where it landed for me. Just so when I'm painting, I'm going to have this to the side. All right, so I think we're ready to get started. So the first thing we always want to do when we are dealing with a paint job, we want to really look at it and inspect it and kind of figure out our game plan. And it's okay to change your game plan along the way, but to start out with one, it's super important. And what I'm going to do is I've got two main areas that I need to focus on. I've got the red, like the Santa suit and the hat that I got to focus on, and then his skin. And there's not a lot of skin. It's just his face and around the back here and his hands. And I know it's a little hard to see right now just because of the black primer, but I went ahead and already primed the model, and he is black. But like I said previously, you can see that we have red right here. So there's a few little areas that you can still see some of the red. I didn't do a great priming job on it around the hands specifically, but we're going to completely take care of that with paint. So if you guys have questions or anything like that, please feel free to put them in the comments. And honestly, if you're painting along with me tonight, I would love to hear how it's going for you, and let me know if you're actually painting with me. And if you're not, if you're just here to hang out and talk and just watch this process, that is awesome too. So what we're going to do first is I am going to focus on the red. And what I'm going to use for that, surprisingly, I'm going to be using a spouncer because I want to kind of get some texture of some dark on here. And I'm really just going to rough it in. And the big thing here is when I'm painting the green and red, the last thing I'm worrying about is the white. The white will be one of the last things that we paint. So if I get some bleed over, it's not a big deal. And just remember that, because when you're layering your paints, if you layer them in the right way, you don't have to worry about certain edges, and you won't have to worry about edges until the very end. So what I'm going to be doing is taking my spouncer, and I am going to be using a darker red. I've got this Tuscan red, and it's a really dark red. And I'm going to be just putting that on my texture paint palette right here. And then we're going to just start in on this. So I'm going to try to get this entire thing done during this whole live stream. So hopefully it's not going to take forever for us, but I think we can get it just because of the limited colors. Oh, Dennis. All right. I'm glad you're going to try. So if you have any troubles along the way when it comes to painting this, you let me know. We can work through it here. So now, for those of you that might have a limited like paint supply, like I have all of these paints up here, and I can just pick whatever color I want, which makes it a lot easier for me. But for those of you that don't, you can actually take your red, like if you have just one red, you can just apply like maybe just a tiny bit of black, and then mix it and kind of get a dark red, because that's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with our dark tones, and then we're going to work our way up to the lighter tones, because at the very end, when we start dry brushing all of this texture and stuff like that, it is going to look amazing. So I'm just going to take this spouncer, and don't feel like you have to use a spouncer. If you have like a makeup brush or something like that, you can actually use this and do like a stippling pattern. I just wanted to use a sponge just because I like some of the texture that it gives, because we are going to get a good coat on this, but you're still going to see probably some of the black. Now, another important thing when we're dealing with the painting here is you want to always like try to look at references. And I've already looked at references when it comes to the Grinch. And this is the old school, like original, like Chuck Jones, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And it's honestly one of my favorites. So this one, when it comes to the coloring, he was just a bright green and a bright red and a white. There wasn't any shading or anything like that. But through the other versions I was looking, like there's all these different shadings around his nose and things like that. So I'm going to actually kind of give like a little bit of a dark realism look to this, because I just think it'll look awesome with this model. So here we go. So I'm just going to first just get a little bit of paint on here, and then I'm going to tap it on my board here. And you can use anything. Like if you wanted to use like a palette like this, you can easily just kind of like tap it to get some of the paint off. Then I'm going to go around and we're going to just start doing this. So we'll zoom in here, and I'm going to just start applying this. And if I don't get in the shadows that well, I'm fine with that, because I kind of like that look. Any advice to those of us that are colorblind? Honestly, I have never considered that. And I have some friends that are colorblind, but they don't paint. Honestly, I would think that you would have to just kind of figure out what colors they are. Like, I would assume if you're colorblind, if you looked at an image of, like, say, the Grinch or whatever you're painting, you could match those same colors. Does it work that way? I'm kind of curious about that. Uh, Let me know, like, how do you try to match colors? And I'm just reapplying it. I'm actually, when I'm adding more paint, I'm going back to where I originally stamped because it's got a lot of paint right there. All right. So the key here to, like, how we're, like, applying this right now is I'm really just trying to be very sporadic with it, and I want kind of that blotchy look. So if you're using a dry brush, you're going for the same kind of thing. Like, try not to focus in just one area a whole lot. Like, you want to keep moving it around because it's really just kind of giving that texture that we're going to go for this, like, fabric. And you guys can let me know if this music is too loud. I was trying something new. It had some music, and I figured I could, when I'm not talking, at least it's got something. And if you apply too much paint, don't worry about it, honestly. Like, it's not that big of a deal because at the end of the day, when it comes to this, you could just paint this entire thing exactly like a solid color. Like, and it wouldn't matter. And then you could do the next technique that we're doing. And I just keep applying it like this. And these smooth areas up front, I'm kind of hitting it a little harder than I am in some of the other areas because I'm kind of thinking of how the light is hitting it. So this is just starting to build up that color of paint. And there we go. So you can already see how you're starting to see some of those shadows kind of come to life. And doing this same technique with a dry brush, you're going to get the same type of results. You just want to make sure you're using, like, a broader one. If I was using a focused point like this, I would get a lot different results. So you want a nice round dry brush or a makeup brush. That's actually what these are, is makeup brushes. So I might actually see, yep. So I'm going to switch to this makeup brush, and I'm just going to get some on it. Just kind of dab it, get enough on there, and then I'm going to kind of get in these cracks right here. But you can see how I'm just stippling it. So I'm just kind of using the very tip of my brush, getting some paint on it. You know, you don't want to remove a lot of paint like you do when you're dry brushing. You kind of want to just kind of stab it and try to get that texture. And I'm just trying to get inside this underneath him right there and get some of that color in there. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever, you just ask. So, all right, we got a question. Blazman, hey, how we doing? So why do you start with a black primer and not white or gray? Is there any time you'd want to use a different color primer? So to answer that question, I wanted to go with a darker look when it comes to the Grinch, because honestly, when you really think about it, the Grinch is kind of terrifying. Like, yes, he's a cartoon, but if you think of like a monster living in a cave that's terrifying people, like, I just think he should be a little more grizzled. So I wanted this dark look. So if you see like these shadows, now if I would have used a white, I would have had to go the exact opposite. Like, I would have had to be painting in those shadows, and doing it this way, I'm leaving the shadows there. So I'm taking advantage of my primer and not having to like fully like paint all of the dark areas because they're already dark. So a lot of the time when I'm painting with a black primer, I'm using those shadows. Like, I'm using it because I don't want to paint that, and I'm going to use that black instead of having to paint that black in. Now, if I am painting, let's say if this was a skin tone instead of a green, I would definitely be painting that a gray or a white, because you don't want to have this light tone and have to keep building it up. So there's definite times that like I'll use either a gray, a white, or a black, but it's really what my end result is. With this, I just wanted so much shadow and stuff like that with him. I thought it would be really cool to just have him black. Now, when it comes to like, if I have something that has a bunch of different colors on it, I sometimes will just automatically go gray, because that way I don't have to worry about covering too much up. And if I want it to be black, I can just paint it black. But for this, that's like, you can see all of those dark shadows, and we're going to be leaving those shadows. So it really just kind of helps us along and helps us kind of skip a step. So does that help answer your question? Ace 3D Prints, welcome. So now I got this all done, and now I'm going to go into the hat. So I'm going to jump back over to my spouncer here and just go at it. Not worrying about if I hit the like the brim where it's supposed to be white. Oh, not a big deal. We haven't been going very long. Like, this is this hasn't been, we just started at 8 o'clock, so we've only been going for like 15 minutes or so. And we've already got some red laid down on this guy, because we are painting the Grinch. But if you guys have any other questions, ask them. If I can answer them, I absolutely will. So do I paint all the color at once? Now, when it comes to if it's the same, yes. So the red of his hat and of his jacket, I guess, that is all the same. So I'm going to paint that all the same red, because so I don't have to go back and forth, because I've already got the brush. Like, I don't want to have to like clean it and come back later and then, do it again. That's partially because I'm lazy. And the other thing is honestly, I think it's a little bit of efficiency to be able to get all of that color at the same time. Oh, so or do I let them dry? You're gonna see because I'm not stopping until this thing's done. So I have once I finish this hat, I will show you what I do. Now I have some friends I've talked to that tell me I shouldn't do this sometimes because it changes the quality of the paint when it's drying. But I'll show you. I just need to finish this light right here. And I just want to get really good around the brim. I don't want any shadows there. And I'm hitting this a lot harder, if you noticed, because of the light. I want this to kind of be brighter. I don't want to have a ton of shadows on the hat because I just feel like it should be a little brighter. But even then, it's going to be a little dark. Okay, so just kind of get a little more there. There we go. So once I have it, what I do is I have this beautiful thing. And this is just a little compact hairdryer. And the one thing I like about it is it actually has different modes. So it has a cool mode and a hot mode. So I can just blow cold air. And that's what I'm about to do. So I am actually going to mute this so you don't hear this deafening loud hairdryer. So give me 1 second. Okay, so that's what I do. I use that. Now, a few things about doing it that way. So when you're like rapidly cooling off and letting the paint dry, it can actually affect the texture of your paint. So it is always best to allow it to just set after between coats and just let it naturally dry. Because when you do that, you're going to get the smoothest coat possible because it's going to dry evenly and you're not going to get any kind of texture. Because if you use heat, which I don't recommend for PLA, because I'm not using heat, that was just blowing air essentially, really focused, and it helps it dry. But when you use heat on PLA, guess what? It'll start to melt, or it'll start to like the infill air in there will start to expand, and it'll just be terrible. But that is what we're going to be doing for the first coat of our Grinch. So we can see that we still have some grittiness. We don't see 100% coverage except for on some of the shoulders and on the top of the hat, because I am going to just keep building layers. So I hope that has made sense, at least with the drying Ace 3D prints. Okay, so here we go. Chris, you got a question. Dry brush sets on Amazon go for about 15. I think those are pounds. I'm in the US, so I'm not familiar with the symbols. But 15 for 6 brushes. Makeup brushes sets go for 4 for 12 brushes. What are your thoughts on which is best? So, all right, Chris, my thoughts on which is best. So I have expensive airbrushes from Artist Opus, which he has amazing dry brushes. I have Army Painter dry brushes, which are really, really nice. But right here, I also just have straight up makeup brushes. Now, and that's what this is, what I was painting with, is a makeup brush. And makeup brushes can work great if you get the right kind. Now, if you notice the difference between like these dry brush, like official dry brushes, they have a nice round tip on them. And if you noticed that they're really short. So the shorter, the better. And I have even seen some people cut their dry or makeup brushes. and you can get great results with them. I used makeup brushes for the longest time because I just didn't want to invest in dry brushes. But once I did, I tell you what, it changed my life. I love them just because of how soft they are, because they're just as soft as a makeup brush, but they're a little more focused because it's hard to find a makeup brush with this type of tip. And if you can find one with this kind of tip, that's awesome. Or you can cut one down to try to make it more focused, because there's not a lot of bend in these bristles when you're like applying them. Like if you're doing a stippling and going back and forth, they're really soft, but they hold up. These have a ton of flex to them. So like it can kind of mess up and go in places you don't want sometimes, but they still work really good. Like if you're trying it out, I strongly recommend like going the cheaper route. Like I wouldn't invest in dry brushes like immediately unless you have the money and you want to do that. But makeup brushes can work really well. But that being said, I will say there are different types. Like I've bought those packs too, and you get stuff like this, and they just don't work very well. Like I've used this just for regular painting on big stuff, but this is a makeup brush, and it's not very good. So usually in those sets, I can only find like 2 or 3 that work really good, and then the rest are like meh. So I hope that helped you, Chris. So would you do the same thing if you thin your paints? Boba Fett's rock kit. So are you talking about when I'm stippling and stuff? Like I was just using in dry brushing, I just use the straight up paints. I don't actually thin these paints when I'm doing that. I only thin my paints when I'm using a brush and applying them. I think that helps. And yeah, UK pounds. I did get it right. All right. That was a guess on my part. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're now going to go a little lighter. So what I'm going to do makes lots of sense. Much appreciated. All right. Yeah, no problem. I am all about going as cheap as possible. Like, obviously, I'm using like cheap bottle craft paints, even though I have like all of these other paints. Like when it comes to some models, I can get really good results with this stuff. And I think it's how you use it. I don't think it's really a matter of like, this paint is better or this paint is better. But I will say some of the yellows and things like that, when you're in the more expensive, they have a higher pigment, so it's easier to paint them. So that's kind of, I do use the yellows quite a bit. Ace 3D Prints, can you also do us a favor and add a list of brushes that we can get on Amazon? Yeah, I will do that for you, and I'll add it to the description after the video. And here, I'll even take a note for you just so I don't forget. Dry brushes. Yep, there we go. I took a note. I will go ahead and do that for you. So after this, like check back in a little while after the live. Well, this is the only bad thing about these craft paints, and I'll show it to you. I was going to pull it off camera, but might as well show you guys. When sometimes they will dry, because you are essentially, when you're like going through your paints, you are like adding more air. So like the tops will dry sometimes, and then you have to just kind of peel off the top and then shake it real good. So what I'm going to be using, before I get too far, I want to take this, and I've got my little paint log, and I'm just going to put that there just so I can keep track of all the paints I'm using. And if you didn't see that, I actually have this paint log and 3D print log book that I created just to be able to keep track of stuff. So like, here's all my settings. And if you want to pause, I actually used the super fine 0.08 millimeter layer height. And I just printed it with like Bambu red PLA. But this is the logbooks that I just put out on my Etsy store for 3D printing, painting and 3D printing, and just painting. But it just kind of helps me keep track of stuff. So Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this berry red and add some of this on my paint palette. And this one is a lot brighter. So what we're going to do is I'm going to still take this, and you can keep stippling with a dry brush too if you want. But if you notice, I'm mixing it with the actual darker paint. So it's going to give me a brighter version of what I just did. So I'm going to go back over what I just did. All right. Corpse Starch, welcome, man. I can show you how to fix those paints. I'm sure you can, if anybody could. And Corpse Starch, just to let you know, Black Friday got me, man. I got a nice little set of golden paints just because of you, because of your recommendations. And I've already used the yellow, and I love it. You were awesome at giving those recommendations. And for those of you on the live that don't know who Corpse Starch is, he is a master of paints. He knows everything there is to know about paints and paint chemistry. And we did a live a little while ago talking about that stuff. If you haven't seen it and you want to know more about paints, like, that was such an amazing live. We're going to have to do that again, man. Dennis got the Army Painter dry brushes. They're good so far. Yep, the Army Painter dry brushes. That's what I've got here, and I'll be using these in a little bit. They are fantastic. And you could be using this on this whole process too, Dennis. So all I'm doing is going back over, but I'm going a lot lighter, and I'm just kind of focusing on those higher areas with this. And kind of avoiding the shadowy areas, because I'm just building up this brightness to like get this coat a little brighter. We're just kind of getting this painted. So you can see how we're just kind of getting the highlights. I'm focusing on the top because I don't know, something about me really wants this thing to be like a grungy, dark Grinch. So if you wanted to go the exact opposite way, because like this is art, you can make it however you want. But if you want to make it brighter, you can hit this super hard. I'm just hitting it hard in like the front area where his gut is sticking out. So like if you see from the top view, his stomach does stick out. So I want that a little brighter. And then I'm just kind of focusing on the arms and the shoulders a little more. This looks like devil. Yeah. I don't know. I love the Grinch, and I've seen some really cool like dark versions of the Grinch. And maybe that's my inspiration. I don't know, but I just think it would be cool to see that. So we'll zoom out a bit. All right, so I've got all of this done. Let's see if we can focus on here. Man, I have a hard time focusing with my camera. So you can see here that we have that grim, dark Grinch. Yeah, I guess that's what he might turn out to be. But we've got that all lit up, and now I'm going to do the top of the hat, and I'm going to really brighten this up. Is anybody else besides Dennis painting along with me? All right. Add a little more. Don't have paints yet. Oh, painting, but not the Grinch. What are you painting? Is there sound? There, I got music in the background. If it's bugging you guys, I can take it off because I'm not talking the whole time. Oh, unless he can't hear me. Can everybody else hear me well? Okay. So there we go. All right, good. Glad you guys can hear me. All right, so now I have got my next layer all done, and he's starting to brighten up, but still be dark in some areas here. So now I am just going to try to get this paint off of my little spouncer here. And then I'm going to just use this straight berry color and kind of go back over it. And this is where I'm just going to start to blend some of these highlighted areas. And you can see how it's really starting to brighten up now. But I'm going to be very focused on that. And I'm just making sure that I remove a lot of that paint because I don't want a huge glob showing up all at once. So I'm just kind of using this. Now, if I could just do this all dry brushing, but I wanted some like unique texture in it. So that's why I'm using a spouncer, and you can get packs of these on Amazon. I'm a big fan of using spouncers for like getting texture and uneven kind of blends, just because I like the variation that it gives, because it's just not perfect. So get this stomach. And if you notice, when I go around it, we still have that shadow around the button. Like this one I've been hitting a little hard, but we just have that nice shadow. So if you can see there, he's like, it's really starting to kind of come to life with those shadows. Yeah, practice makes perfect, man. Like honestly, I have so many things that I just randomly practice techniques on. And the best thing about like if you 3D print, like if you have fails, like you can just like prime your fails and like just paint on those too. Like I really like I've got so many failures that I paint on just because like it just keeps giving me practice. And that's always a good thing, to like not throw away any fails you have. And I even know some people that will 3D print extras just so they could practice on one, and then the other one is their actual like real one that they're going to be doing. So it's like it's such an amazing hobby that you can just do that. All right, so now we're going to go a lot brighter on the top now. And I'm really just filling it in here because the top, I don't want much shadow. And then I'm going to get it off of my spouncer and then just kind of blend the sides and like kind of bring it down. So like I'm coming down, but then I'm removing paint. That way the wet paint that's actually on the model, I'm kind of just like drawing it into my sponge and bringing it down to give it less and less. And then that'll give us a nice little gradation. Because you want it to start leaving your sponge. And then the other thing is, I'm gonna get a little more paint in there with my dry brush. And there we go. So you can see how we start to get from like lighter to darker, and I'm keeping some of those dark cracks just because I think it looks cool. And there we go. So now I'm going to pause the audio here so you don't hear me, because I'm going to use my hair dryer and on cool mode and dry this, because it'll go pretty quick because I haven't been painting with thick layers. All right. So, like I said, it's not always wise to use a hair dryer. Corpse starch actually taught me that because it affects the texture. But this is kind of one of those things that I'm glad it's giving me a little more texture. So, if you want really smooth paints, just let them air dry. But if you want some cool textures and a little rougher paint, then that's the way to go. Because here, if I can show you guys, you can see I'm starting to get some like texture to that paint, and it's not fully dry, but it's also the way I'm building it up. Mark, how we doing, man? All right, so now one of the last steps that we're going to do is we're going to go even brighter. So I am going to go with the brightest red I have, which is flag red. And I'm going to just apply a little bit, shake it up first. Okay, so I've got it on my paint palette here, and I'm going to use my spouncer again. And this time I am going to go crazy light with this, crazy light. And I'm going to get as much off of this. It's almost like a dry brush. And I'm just going to barely add some to these raised edges. So like, then you can kind of see some of that gradation of how it gets brighter. So not using a whole lot. And I'm just blending it down so to be able to get that shadowing. So I want it real bright on the top. And then just bring it down. Hello, welcome. And now I'm just kind of subtly adding some speckled of like bright paint. Now, when you put it on, you might think it's going to look a little too bright, because like right now, it's like, oh, wow, that's pretty bright. But it will actually, like when it dries, it gets a little darker. So you don't have to like worry that much. And I'm just kind of getting some of this, kind of focusing on where I really want it to like have those highlights. And there we go. So you can kind of see that. So when that dries, it's going to look a lot better. So now I'm going to do the same thing on the top. And this is going to be hit just a little bit harder, just like I have been doing, because I'm trying to build that brightness up. If you guys got any questions, you ask them. I'll see if I can answer them for you. Oh yeah, love it. I guess what did one of you guys say? The grim Grinch. I just like how dark this is getting. This is looking so good. But it's just kind of fun. I think that's one of my favorite things about painting 3D models is like you can make it whatever you want. Just because like I said earlier, I'm like I've always thought of the Grinch as like this like terrifying monster because you can imagine if you're a Who in Whoville and there's this big like this monster up there that you just don't want to go around. Lives in a cave. I don't know. I just think it's cool. But there we go. All right, so I'm gonna get this drying and then we're gonna move on to our green when this is where it's gonna start to get fun because we're gonna be doing some dry brushing techniques on that. So first, let me pause my audio and then I'm going to dry this. All right. So I think the red is pretty much done for right now. Now we're gonna switch to green. Do you sell painted 3D prints? If so, how much are they compared to raw prints? No, I don't. Honestly, I don't sell my 3D prints. I just kind of collect them and I give them to friends and family when I'm done painting them. Because this guy, I might actually give it to a coworker. So, yeah. But when it comes to just the straight 3D prints and selling, I don't even do that. Like, honestly, I just teach people how to paint and print. I don't really get into the whole print farm and try to sell prints. I just got a round sponge set on Amazon, 30 brushes, 4 different sizes, $7. Yes. So I have gotten the same thing. Like that I think that might be the same thing I get. Sometimes they come blue, sometimes like yellow, like they're great when they're all different sizes because if I would have had if I would have thought about it, starting out, I would have used a bigger one so I can cover the area quicker, but using a little one helped me get some of this definition. But yeah, that's awesome. All right, so we are ready to move forward on the green. I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to get some water here. And before this brush dries out, I'm going to start the process of cleaning. I'm probably just going to let it set here since I'm not going to use it again. The big thing here is if you clean your dry brushes, and which I recommend, you should clean them so you don't get it like paint in them. But when you clean them and after you're done, you want to like get them on a paper towel, make sure you got all the paint out, and then set it on its side. If it's a makeup brush too, and just let it dry. You don't want to like squeeze it with a paper towel and try to get all the, like the moisture out of it, then reuse it. Then it won't be dry because you need to have it dry. So that's why it's a good idea to have multiple dry brushes when you're switching colors, so you don't have to use this one over again. Now, I know some that'll just keep using the same dry brush for different colors, but I don't like to blend the colors like that. It's just a personal preference. Okay, so Now, when it comes to the face, I'm going to set this texture board aside because that's kind of my paint palette. Now I'm going to be using my other dry brush, my other textured paint palette. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Army Painter dry brush and use some of this English Ivy. This is just a really dark green. It's like a dark army green. And I'm going to use that. Just put some down here. And that is going to be my base. Sparky! Hey! Sparky Face 5, thank you so much for joining from Australia. So, if you guys don't know who Sparky Face 5 is, I would strongly recommend going over to Things and look up her name because she's got some really cool models. If you saw me paint the Sand Shrew like about a month ago, that was her model, and it was so much fun to paint. Mostly because I had a new airbrush too, and I was experimenting a lot with it. All right, so when you're dry brushing, you want to just roll the bristles on the edge of the paint and get some paint on the bristles. You don't want to just jab it in there. You want to kind of roll it in because the key is not getting paint just directly inside the brush. You want it on the exterior of the bristles. Then you can use a paper towel, but I use my textured paint palettes. And what these are is essentially paint boards or palettes that have engraved ridges. So if you can hear. And this is my new one that I sell that it's extra deep. So it actually takes off a lot of paint. And the coolest thing about these, since they're acrylic, they're washable. And all I'm going to do is just go back and forth and get some of this off. Actually, I take that back. I am not going to take some of it off. In the very beginning, we're going to apply this heavily. So I'm not going to it. And all I'm going to do is start applying this on there like that. Here we go. Will that adjust to us? There we go. So I'm not trying to get it everywhere, and that's the key here. I do not want it to fill in all of the cracks. So all I'm doing is getting some paint on the bristles and going through and adding that paint on there, directly on it. So you can see that we're getting it just a nice coverage because I want this to be the base tone of his face. And I'm not worried about hitting this white edge either because we're going to take care of that with a brush. And just like I did with the top of the hat, his mouth right here, I want a lot more paint on it. So are you using a dry brush sword? Like a sponge? Yes. So I'm actually, what I'm doing is I am stippling this. So I am using a dry brush for a stipple effect, and that will actually give me an uneven pattern to where, if you could see, there we go. Now it's in focus. You can see this uneven pattern to where you can still see dark, you can see light, and that's what we want to do. And that's what we did on the arms and everything like that. We started building it up in different colors and brightened it more and more to really get some of that look. So all I'm doing is I am applying it in different areas, trying not to get everything. Because the key to this look is really just being as random as you can with just different colors. But when it comes to the mouth, I really want to apply a lot more there and get it around the nose. Because when this dries, like you can see, some of these areas have already dried and it's getting really dark. because we're not applying a ton of paint, but we are applying it. Layers, layers, layers. And let's get underneath. And then also I'm going to hit a little harder on the tops of the cheeks. Just trying to think of that lighting. When you like look at it from the top, what you see here should get a little more light. So I'm kind of just doing a general like directional light from the top. Okay. So there we go. We can see that we've gotten this nice, just dark look. Now, the other key here is I have his hands that I've got to paint. So I'm going to have to come back with a brush and do that. Just because this big round brush is not going to be able to really get in there without hitting the red. And we want to avoid the red right now. So we're just going to do that. Now, the next thing is I am going to take a brighter green, and this is just a clover green from Folk Art. Shake it up and put some down. Now, this is like a lighter, but still like darker tone-ish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of that, kind of mix it and get a little bit off of there. And while this is even still wet, I'm going to start in on just stippling some of this. And really just kind of being very precise with where I want to hit it. If I can get them to focus. This is making me want to watch this cartoon. So I guess the big question out there is, which Grinch movie is your favorite? Because there's been so many of them over the years. I think there's like, what, 3 or 4? The Jim Carrey one's pretty good. I can't lie. But I think my favorite is the classic, the one that we're painting tonight. This one is like, I think, definitely my favorite. OG. All right, Mark. You're with me. Chuck Jones growing up was like my like hero. Like he is the creator of most of the Looney Tunes and did the original Grinch, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. All right, so I'm going to be very subtle with this. So I'm actually going to probably do some dry brushing right here. So you can see how he's starting to like kind of take shape with some of like the shadowing here. I'm just going to need to go around and keep getting the rest. Yeah, he's amazing. I tell you what, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's still around, but I know there used to be a museum for Chuck Jones in London. Like, that's one of my bucket list items, is to go to that. Actually, for last Christmas, I painted Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner for my dad as a Christmas present, because he's the one that got me into cartoons with Chuck Jones and stuff. Okay. So we're really starting to get some good texture in this. Just want to make sure you get an even yet random amount, because like if you see right there in the corner of his eye, I've missed. So I've got to try to get some in there. And when you're stippling and trying to get into cracks, it helps if you twist your brush too, because like the bristles will kind of flow in there. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this with my blow dryer and get this nice and dry. Then we're going to, all right, we'll see you, Sparky Face. I'm going to go ahead and hit this with my dryer. Let me mute it so you don't hear, be deafened by. Oh, sorry guys. I just realized my audio is still off. So what I'm doing now is I am reapplying some of that green because I noticed it's a little dark. So all you have to do when it's a little too dark, after it dries, and you're like, oh, I don't like how that looks, just reapply, do another layer, because it's that buildup of layers that's going to help with the opaqueness of that color, so it'll really start to shine. Because this is really where I was wanting to go with it, because some of these areas are just still a little too dark, but I kind of like having it in certain areas. But we'll just see what we can do here. Dennis, are you still painting this guy with me? And for those of you that wanted to come back and actually paint this guy, I've got a link to him in the description. He's actually a free model on Thingiverse I found, and I just thought it was really nice. So I was like, absolutely, I'm going to paint this. Now, I know I said this in the very beginning, but I just want to say thank you to all of my patrons and everybody in the community, because they're the reason why I'm doing this. Because I had some people asking to do a paint with me so they could paint along. Dennis is one of them. Yep. Are you on green with me now? You're going to have to post some pictures of what he's going to look like. If you get done at the end with me, I can share it on the live stream so people can see what you made. And there we go. Okay. So kind of like that. All right, so here we are. Now we've got this just like we want it. And once you get the tone that you want, then we're going to go to the next step, and if you also notice, I have a lot darker on the top, and a lot. Oh, God. Oh, I didn't drop it in the paint. I thought I did. Woo! There we go. Thank God. So if you notice, like I was saying, it's brighter green on the top and darker on the bottom. So like if I flip this guy around, you can see the darker spots, and on the top, you see the brighter greens. So, and that's just kind of going to help me with the shadows of him. So now what I'm going to do, once again, I'm going to use a hairdryer, make sure this is nice and dry. Then we are going to start dry brushing the highlights. Okay. So now we're ready to start dry brushing the highlights. And what we're going to do, am I still muted? Can you hear me? Uh-oh. It says I'm not. Can you guys hear me? It says I'm still muted. Okay, you can hear me. So now what I'm going to do is what I like to do when I'm doing highlights. I like to go really bright, like really bright. So I am going to go with this Irish moss. And I absolutely love this color. It's like one of my favorite colors. And that's why this color is my logo. So what I'm going to do is going to get this, and you can see how bright this is. Here we go. Let's put it on. So you can see in comparison over white. So you can see how much brighter this is, this green. So what I'm going to do is I am going to, first I'm going to get all of the paint I can out of my brush. So I'm just going back and forth because if you notice, I'm not washing it. I'm just getting the paint out because there's still paint on the brush. And there we go. So now if I do a test, I can see that I don't have any paint on there. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to just get a little amount and kind of just get the edges of my bristles really good. And then remove. And when I'm going back and forth, I'm twisting to be able to make sure that I get it from all sides of my brush. So if you see how I twist like this, that helps. Then I'm just going to kind of test it on my hand, and you can see just a light pigment. Now, Dennis, I know we were talking previously about you're always having a hard time getting too much paint or not enough. This is what I do. Is like I will do what I just showed, but then when I do this, I make sure I see just a little bit. And then that's about the right amount. Now we're ready to start dry brushing. And this is the key for how I'm wanting to do this with this design or this concept of how I'm painting it. I'm trying to make everything dark underneath. So I do not want to go up. Like when I'm dry brushing, I'm only going to be stroking down. There might be a few points where I might try to, but for the most part, I'm only going to do it from coming down. Now, just this little bit of this really bright green is going to just bring out so much. So you can see already, here we go. You can see how that's just completely changing it. So that is what we're going for. We're just wanting to get those edges. And I am turning my brush too to make sure that like I keep getting a new part of my brush on there. And I'm just very lightly, like it, if you see like, it's like that. I'm just kind of holding it and pushing it with my index finger, and that's it. Because it's, if I'm not against this, you can see like it's going to just fly off. So that is how hard I'm pushing. Not hard at all. And that's the big key. Oh, audio all good. Good to hear, Chris. So you just want to keep doing this over the same areas until you get the desired effect that you're looking for. Because I want this has so much texture in this model. I just love it. So you can see how much like definition we got versus this side. You guys see that difference? I can even go closer. Real bright, dingy. So yeah. Now I'm going to get a little more paint. Same thing. I'm going to just take it off and then do a test. All good. And remember, I want the muzzle. I guess it's a muzzle. I don't know what you would call that. Is snout or nose. I'm going to put that, give that a little more, just because I want it a little brighter. And I think I'm going to hit his eyebrows just a little harder as well, because I kind of like that definition. So I'm going to go up underneath the eyebrows to get a little more of a highlight there, because we're going to make his eyes are actually yellow. So that's going to look real good. So as soon as you realize you're not getting enough paint, like you don't see that highlight anymore. And I sometimes test it on another area that I haven't done. And I'm running out of hand space. Yep. And for this, I'm doing if you notice, I'm doing very short strokes because I'm just kind of flicking it on the top raised edges. And at the bottom of the chin, I'm going to have to go the other way for that to get the definition. There we go. He's really turning out good. All right. I always love the evolution of paint jobs. There's always that stage where it looks like garbage. Like in the beginning here, it didn't look very good when I was applying the red. But after it dried, I'm actually really happy with how it blended. All right. So final pass, we can see that we need to get a little more down here. I'm still only going down, but trying to get into those cracks and get some more of that. Just the raised edges. There we go. So, full spin here. Kind of a fun, simple little model. Oh, message me some pictures. All right, Dennis. Here we go, guys. So Dennis is also painting with us. Here, let's Zend. Trying to see if I can share this with you guys. Oh, here we go. You guys can see that Dennis is working on different ones here. Let's see if I can present the other one. Share screen. Here we go. That's looking really good, man. All right. We're getting some Grinches. All right. So now that we have that, I am going to go back here and I'm going to take a brush. I actually just picked up some of these brushes at Target. I think they're kid brushes, but I was like, oh, these are kind of cool because there was some nice little like detailing brushes, and I was like, all right, I'll try them. They're like Mondo Llama. I was like, I'm always willing to try any cheap little brush. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna get a little bit of water, some distilled water over here, and get my brush a little wet, and I'm going to kind of pre-mix thin some paint over here, just right here. And now what I'm going to do is start in on the hands because I don't want to get too far. And this has already got a hair here. Tweezers are really great to have sometimes because I've got one single hair sticking up right here. There we go. Maybe these aren't great brushes. I'm going to switch to my other ones. All right, so I'm just going to be painting the hands in this dark green. Try to get all the way around there. And just get a nice complete coverage. And I don't like that brush. Let's switch. Let's try this one. All right. And I'm just doing my absolute best not to touch the red, because now we're to the point where I do not want to repaint that red. And I'm just trying to apply a nice, thin, even coat of it and try not to get any brush strokes or anything like that. And that's really it. Now we're ready for fingers. And I'm gonna get a little more water. I sometimes will like do this. Like I have a little paint dish right here with some water in it. I'm getting my brush nice and saturated with water and then mix it in with the paint on the side to thin it down. And this is just distilled water. And then I have a nice thin down paint to be able to paint with. And it goes on a lot smoother if you do it that way. Most of the other times is I'll just put some paint and add in a few drops of distilled water. And the key here is just taking your time. Like if you don't paint as fast as me, like don't worry. It's definitely not a race when it comes to this stuff. This is my zen. I love painting. These sharp little fingers are challenging. And there we go. Now he's got red fingernail tips. Got to paint those. There we go. Now, if you noticed, I'm not painting down deep down in the cracks because I want to keep that black there. So if you see there, like I'm leaving it there because like I don't want to paint that. So all I'm doing is just trying to cover up everything and get some really nice close brush strokes around that hand. This is the part that scares me. Oh, wait. Plasman, this is the part that scares me, the fine details. Take steady hand and good eyesight. I'm not sure I have either. I tell you what, I will show you this. So it just takes time and practice. That's the first obvious key. But this isn't detailed enough for me yet. But like I have these, and these things are amazing. So this can at least cover the first part, like the good eyesight, because I wear glasses. So these are fantastic because they're just magnifying glasses when you're like wearing them. I mean, they get really close for you. So these are awesome. These are on Amazon, and they're pretty cheap. I think like maybe $20, but you can adjust them, and they have different size lenses too. Because I will be using that when I get to the eyes. Yeah, Dennis has got some too. Yeah, they are fantastic to use. Like I use them all the time because I'll take off my glasses and put them on, and they work out really good. They are probably one of my favorite tools when it comes to painting. I use them a lot. I can probably just put a link down in the description for you after this live. $16, just bought it. Awesome. Yeah, they're really good. Yeah, I didn't think that they were that expensive. Because they have these, you just wear them like glasses, but it also came with these, like the glass part, the earpieces come off and it's like an elastic band. I'm used to wearing glasses. Okay, so now I have that. So we have this part. Now we're ready to move to the next color. And what I'm going to do is, honestly, I'm going to get a little water here first, start mixing this up because it's dried up a little bit. Mix this up a bit and get a little bit of dark in there. Kind of mix it together a little. And I am going to just go right over top of this, but only in certain areas. So just on the tops of the hands. Then what I'm going to do is get my brush even wetter with water. And you can see, let's make sure we can see this. So you can see how this line, I'm actually going to get water and just kind of draw it down to just kind of blend it. So then it's going to be able to be a little thinner at the bottom. And that way I can do that blend. So I'm hoping that's focusing for you. So I am doing nothing but getting water on my brush and kind of pushing that paint around. That way it's thinner down here. So this is kind of a wet blend. So add my paint just to the tops of the fingers. Then I'm going to get that paint off of it. Get a little more clean water. Get my brush wet. And then I'm just going to kind of blend it and feather it out by kind of tapping it. Come on, focus on what I need. So you can still see some of that red through. So I'm just trying to cover that up. And that, getting my brush wet is just kind of blending it. And there we go. Now what I'm going to do is take the hair dryer and then I'm going to dry this. Then we're going to do the last step of that. All right, let me mute me so you don't hear the hair dryer. Okay, so there we go. Got that dry. I'm going to have to probably put another coat on. And we got a question. ADP just jumped in. Is PLA easy to print? If so, what's the best method? So this is PLA. So I printed this in Bambu's brand PLA. Um, it's easy to print. Like, I don't understand the best method. Like, are you talking about like layer height or temperature, or could you clarify that a little bit more? But I would say it's easy to print. Out of all the filaments, it's the easiest. All right, so I'm going to take my dry brush here, and I am going to get some of this bright green again. Get it a little bit. And get the texture board to remove the paint. We'll test it. So now I'm just going to get the very tops, and I'm going to be very, 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 very controlled in how I'm brushing it. So I don't want to get it on anything else. So I'm just trying to get the tops and the edges very carefully. And there we go. So just real lightly. So around this cuff and stuff, I don't mind because that's going to be painted white. There we go. So now we got a little bit of a highlight there. I don't like this bottom finger. I'm going to see if I can get a little more on it. There we go. There we go. All right, so we're pretty much done with the red and the green now. And I honestly, I think he's looking pretty good. And I don't know what you guys think. Feel free to tear it apart. Not going to hurt my feelings. It's art. So now what we're going to do is, I think since the eyes are going to be a multiple step process, I am going to go ahead and start in on the eyes. Looks amazing. Oh, thanks a lot. It's been a fun project. Okay, so the Grinch eyes. This is the one thing, because we're going with like a darker theme Grinch, like the grim Grinch, essentially. But his eyes are bright yellow, and I want these things to glow. So I am going to be using this golden paint. This is a high-end paint that their pigment is just out of this world. So what I'm going to do is shake it up, and I'm going to put this in my paint palette up here. Don't need a whole lot. And I'm just going to add a drop of distilled water, and that's it. And now what I'm going to do is, I got to clean my brush. And I have little shot glasses that I sometimes use for this. So just cleaning it off, dropping it, and throwing it on my lap. That's part of the process. And grab a paper towel. And when I dry it off, I like to spin it and point it so I got a nice tip. And now I'm just going to take this yellow, mix it a little bit with my brush. Then I'm going to plasma in. Here we go. I'm putting on my glasses so I can actually see. So here we go. So what I'm going to do is go in here and just first, what I'm going to do is I am going to just paint the entire thing in the middle. okay? Because I want to not get near the edges first. So the whole thing here. Then I'm going to start moving in towards the edges because of this hair. I want to stay within the contours of that hair. So that just helps me kind of stay within the lines kind of thing. If you paint in the middle and then work your way to the edge. Might as well paint the whole thing because the inside of the eye is going to be red. That'll just help us later. All right. Because this has got a bunch of weird shapes, like just because of the hair. So I'm kind of jagging into that if you see those edges. So just and there we go. All right. So this is what I like about this golden paint is it coats super well. Like for the first pass, I don't know how many of you guys have like painted with yellow, because yellow can be a nightmare when it comes to painting. Really? Nobody's painted with yellow? So yellow can be terrible. Typically what I'll do is I will do a base coat of white, then I'll paint over top of it. But I've found with this paint, I don't have to. After a few passes, it's pretty good. Because already you can see, like, yeah, it's not perfect, like perfectly opaque, but it is really close. And the best part is that one of yellows. Oh, I see. So Corpse Starch is actually the one that recommended this yellow to me. And I'm like talking about how great this is, and he's telling me it's like it's actually not one of the best ones. So this is one of the bad yellows, is what he means. Yeah. Dennis, you understand. Yeah, yellow is just the worst. But and I'm sure this would have like looked a lot better if I didn't thin it just a little bit. I would have left it, but then I would have had the risk of getting some brush strokes, because you really thin your paints to help you like remove brush strokes. But yeah. Ben's yellow. Oh, I'm gonna have to look into that one. Is that a Ben's yellow corpse starch? Is that a uh golden paint brand? So when printing, oh, okay, we got a question. So when printing, is using fur cura setting, or have you used it trying to figure out to make eyes smooth? So no, well, yes, I've used it's I think, are you talking about the fuzzy setting in experimental in Cura? I actually used that just a little while ago. Like I did a video on those settings, but that the only problem with that is it does the entire model. Like you can't really control what's fuzzy and what's not. That'd be kind of a cool feature if you could, but uh it's really just all or nothing. but this right here, this model specifically, this whole like texture, that's all in the model itself. So I printed it and it just looked that way. And also what I'm doing is I'm trying to bring in a lot more yellow than I need right now, just to kind of build up like a little pool of yellow on the eye. But you don't want to bring in too much when you do this, because then it can like bleed to the edges and then you can get a terrible mess. All right. Oh, so it is a okay. Got it. So there we go. So I've gotten that, and that is probably going to be it. I might add just a little bit more and let this dry. And I'm going to let this dry a little more naturally and not use the hairdryer on this one, because I want to try to get this pretty smooth. Just try to get another coat if I can. Around those edges. All right. Starting to come to life. All right. So we'll hide that. Need a better yellow. Yeah, yellows are the worst, man. I get it. This golden's pretty good, but maybe check out what Corpse Starch recommended too. So now the next part, I'm going to just wash this brush. I'm going to start in on the white. So with the white, I am going to use just a straight white, and honestly, I'm going to use this titanium white from Golden, because I was going to use my Pro Acryl that my friend gave me, and this has been, I've really enjoyed this for a white, but I'm going to try this one because Corpse Starch is on, and he's the one that recommended me to get these. So see, it's still brand new. I haven't even opened it yet. Good old Black Friday deals. If I can open it. All right. All right, so we're painting Christmas Grinch. I got to ask the question. What is our favorite Christmas movies out there? Mine, I'll go first. One of my favorites is obviously this movie and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Those are my top faves. I don't know about you guys. There's some really good Christmas movies out there. And you know what? This is so Xmas Vacation. Gremlins. Oh man, I would never even have thought of Gremlins. Home Alone. Home Alone's a classic. Gremlins, man. So I guess another one would be Die Hard. Christmas Story and Elf. Christmas Story. Last year I watched the Christmas Story 2, and I was shocked at how great that was. I don't know if you saw the second one. All right, so Die Hard, yes. So what I just did is I just poured this in. This is actually really a thin paint, so I didn't even water it down. I don't know. Corpse Starch, do you water this down when you use it? Because it is so thin, it's going on beautifully. I'm going to try to get this thing done for us. I was shooting for a 2-hour live stream, but if it goes a little over, I think we'll be all right. We're getting really close. This is a super bright. We're going to have fun grunging this up a bit. You don't thin much. Okay. Well, then I guess I was on the right track because I didn't thin it. And all I'm going through now is I am just applying this white. I'm applying it everywhere. How does it compare to Pro Acryl? I would honestly say Pro Acryl is just a little bit thickier. I was thinking chalky. It's a little bit thicker. This is thinner, and I kind of like it of how thin it is because it's going on really well. Yeah, my buddy bought this because he was told to try it out because it works really good, and it does. I cannot deny. And they have little glass beads in them. So when you shake it, uh so he ended up buying the whole set and then he gave me his this white to try out. And honestly, I've been heavily debating getting the set of them as well. I've got too many paints as it is, though, but you can never have too many. And I tell you what, this is a little challenging because of all these rough edges, trying to stay right on the rough edges. And if you guys noticed, what I'm doing is I actually like to go around the edges when I'm detailing like this uh, first, and then I'll kind of take a bigger brush and fill in the rest. And he's looking pretty good. Here's the challenging part behind the bulb where it's attached to the print. Oh, I do the same. Wizard Fury. Do the same. Um, oh, along the edges. Yeah. It's just one of those things that I like to do to so I can like go back and then like finish it up real quick. And I'm also applying just a little bit of a thicker coat than I usually do on the edge, mostly because this is a live stream and I want to try to finish this guy because I've got that his wrists around his neck. This might take the longest part. And that's why I did the yellows first. Just so like the eyes can start drying so when we apply the second coat we'll be good. It'll be nice and dry. It's almost dry already. It dries pretty quick. That's one thing I have noticed with this. Yeah, the edges. I think everybody's got their own like little ways that they actually paint things. Like I know I have my own little quirks. And I think I just like the gratification of like when you go through it's all completely done. But yeah, there we go. Tell you what, this is getting me in the Christmas spirit now. I want to see this movie so bad. I'll probably be watching it tomorrow night with the family. All right. So now I got all that. Let's get a wide brush. That way we can have something and say it's complete. I'm going to go with this one. Start on the back. Yeah, and I am applying a lot more paint because I want to get this done in one pass. I typically don't apply this much paint. Take my color. Oh, I would be interested in that. Last time I took color theory class was in college, and that's been more years ago than I'd like to admit. Because I know I've forgotten a lot. Maybe we could do a live stream, talk about color theory. That would be kind of fun. You already taught us a bunch on paint corpse starch. Yeah, but if you guys didn't hear me earlier, corpse starch that's on right now, he and I did a live stream a month or so ago where he explained a bunch of like paint chemistry, how they work, and we were talking about the myths of paint, of like people say you should wear gloves because of the oils in your hands. That was one of my favorite things I got out of it, because the oils don't really affect it. It's, what is it? Is it thermoplasty is what it is? So it's like heating it up, like holding it for too long. The heat in your hand can actually mess up your paint jobs. So like you want to keep moving. And if you notice, I have not stopped moving. That's just how I paint already. That's why I've never had really any issues with it. That white is really thick. Yeah, and that's the thing about this. This is this is actually a really thin white, and I did not thin it down because you're saying it's really thick, and it's this golden paint. It's really, really nice. Like, I can't believe how well it's going on, and I am applying a thick coat, but I mean, it is really going on well. Like, I can't believe how well it's going on. So I guess to answer your question about the Pro Acryl in comparison, I think this might actually be a little better. Because I feel like 2 coats, it would be absolutely perfect. And I'm having to do this like daubing gesture. Oh, sorry, Chris, man. I hope you feel better. Being sick isn't fun. I was sick a couple weeks ago. Still got a little bit of a cough, which isn't fun, but it's the season for it. Almost done. There's a ton of nook and crannies in this print. Like with the texture of the hair, you can see it. It is challenging. Buying that yellow tomorrow. I got mine, Dennis, at Michael's. They had a little kit, and it was 6 colors: yellow, blue. I got red, white, green, and black, I do believe. But I got it on a Black Friday deal at 30% off, and I'm like, yes. But you know, Michael's was always having deals on paints. And there we go. All right, I would call the brim done. I don't think we're going to get to the shadowing of the white tonight just because of all of the time. So I'm going to have to post another little short clip or something showing it. And seeing how this texture is working out, I might be able to, with this brush, get the edges without the point. Yeah. Oh, hey, Chris. How we doing? Welcome. Oh, no problem, man. Those turtle models look really good. If you guys haven't seen on my Discord, I just posted on the Awesome STL's thread. I put up Chris's latest models. He made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ornaments, like the heads. They're like cartoony and they're cool. I was telling him I wanted to kind of do them on my Bambu printer with multicolor filament, like the AMS, and print them out that way to get like a super cartoony. Because I haven't had a ton of time to paint. This is the first time I painted in a while. I think the last time I painted was with you, Chris, on that live stream we did. It's been a minute. Life's been busy. Crafty Shenanigans. I love the name. I'm having issues with my 3D printer, new to 3D printing. I'm on Discord, but was wondering if someone could help me. So I'll probably be on the Discord after this. If you just post a message or even just tag me at MeaD, and we can see if we can help you afterwards. This is beautiful. Thanks, Ryan. It's been a fun paint job. I'm rushing it now. I'm trying to finish this up. We've been painting for almost 2 hours. But we've gotten a lot done in 2 hours. From just a black print. This used to be red PLA. He's looking good. This white is really bright. Really bright. We're going to have to really mute this down and make it kind of grungy to match the theme. I think I'm going to quit. I'm not going to do the bottom part and see if I can get this dry and get the cuffs, and then see if we can finish at least that out before the end of this. Yeah, I'm super happy with how he's turned out. He is, for a Thingiverse model, I tell you what, sometimes you find diamonds in the rough. Like, this was just a really cool model on Thingiverse that I found. So I wanted to make sure if any of you guys wanted to paint it, you could do it as well. And it didn't cost anything. I don't know, I know Dennis is painting this with me right now. Like, how are you coming, man? I know I'm cruising along pretty quick. Chris, I think you weren't on when we were talking about Christmas movies. Got to hear what's your favorite Christmas movie or favorite couple. We had some good ones. Oh, all right. We'll see an update from Denny. All right. Whoo, that white is bright. Look at that. I'm surprised I'm able to get in some of this detailed area with this brush. I probably just jinx myself and I'm gonna like blob it on something. All right, let's see. Denny just... Heck yeah, Denny, that's looking good. Here, let me share it with everybody. Here we go. Share. I'll show you guys where Denny's at because he's sharing it, or he's working on it right now too. There we go. Look at that. You're not too far behind. It's got some good shadows underneath the chin and stuff like that. Looking good, man. Heck yeah. All right, this is not the brush to be using in this area, but oh well. I like it for the middle areas. Not bad for a kid's paintbrush. There is something to be said for really nice paintbrushes, but I don't know. I like using cheap ones. Wish my yellow went down like the white. Yeah, it looked really good, man. When you finish it, you're gonna have to post it up on the Discord for us all to see. All right, I gotta switch to this brush. I need a finer point. I want to get around that cuff. That was the hard part. Couldn't do it with that brush. The other one. There we go. Okay. So now let's wash this. Let's go back to our yellow. And let's do a second pass and see how well this does. And I just grabbed the cuff. Look at me. I don't know how many of you do that, but I do it all the time. I'm like not paying attention. I'm so focused on what I'm painting. That's why you should let everything dry in between steps, but we're on a live and I'm also impatient, so. Man, this yellow is amazing. It's almost in 2 coats, completely got it. What does your seat and desk look like? My desk is too tall. So I actually just have a regular like computer desk. That's what this desk is. And then I have a computer chair, like just like a regular desk chair. Like nothing super fancy or anything like that. And then I keep this little mat to kind of protect it to when I've got paint their silicone mats. I really like using them. I use them for my resin and for painting. That way I don't ever have to worry about getting anything messed up. Stop bragging. All right, we'll see you, Chris. I hope you feel better, man. We'll talk to you later. Okay. So there we go. It's looking pretty good. So, clean my brush off. I'm going to try to dry all of this white. And I just noticed I missed some white right here. There we go. Yep. All right. So now I'm going to mute myself and dry this with the hair dryer on cool. Okay. So, yep, we got it dry. So now this is the next part. Let me clean this brush so I don't let it dry out. And this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take another dry brush, a small dry brush, and this is where it's going to get a little crazy here. I am going to destroy this white. Let me find a good gray. All right. So I'm going to use this zinc, which is just a really dark gray. And what I'm going to do is dry brush-ish. Hold on. There we go. This is a new bottle. So I'm going to take some of this gray, take my dry brush, and get it along the bristles here. Then I'm going to take some of it off. Not a ton of it. So if you see, I've still got some on it. Now I'm going to go along the edges, and I am not going to worry if I get the red or the green or anything like that. The only thing I want to avoid is the yellow. So I am going to go in there and darken this up a bit. And I'm really trying to get into the cracks. Now the key here is I'm going to go underneath it where the shadows are to get it kind of sooty looking. So if you see here, it's looking darker now instead of that brilliant looking color we had. And I'm going to also be twisting my brush to get it really in those cracks. This isn't much of a dry brush as it is. It's just kind of a gritty looking thing we're doing. We just want to dirty it up. So the key is not to have a lot of paint on your dry brush, but you want enough. Because I want some of that white to show through. It's almost the exact opposite of, like, this was beautifully white, but it being him, it's just gritty and grimy, and that's what we're really wanting. So, like, I'm going to also kind of dry brush some of the edges on the top. And this is the part where, you can get it as dirty as you want. Because even that gray on the green isn't going to really affect you that much. And see, now it's like the white was been drugged through soot, like he went down a chimney. And I'm just going to continue to do that on different areas. Kind of just focusing on that white. And that's where I like, if I get paint other places on this, I'm not too concerned because it's a gray. So it's like the soot got other places. Get a little more. Because I think that's the big thing when you're painting stuff like this, is actually considering if this was real, like what would it look like? Like getting real references and things like that. Like we know that this, like if it was a Santa suit, it was a bright white, like in a bright red. But if he was like going through a chimney or anything like that, it would have gotten gritty and ugly looking. But it might just be matted, but underneath that is that brighter color. And that's why I didn't start with a gray and just dry brush white on it, because the white wouldn't be on top, the dark would. And I'm just kind of controlling some different areas, make it a little heavier. And I'm like really trying to feather this out. So you can see now it's looking pretty nasty. Yes, Dan Aykroyd Santa from Trading Places. My goodness, that is a great one. I think that's it. Isn't that a Christmas movie? Yeah. Just that should be on the list. That's a great one. Eddie Murphy. God, I forgot the woman's name. Who's the woman that's in it? I forget her name. You gotta help me out, Dennis. All right. Now we can go even darker. So I'm going to take black, just straight up black. And you see how much I'm putting on my board. Not very much. Like, we're just going to take a little bit of black. And I mean a little bit. Because when you dry brush with black, man, I mean, that was all we need. And I'm going to go in for just a few places and really darken it up. And this is the key here. Just barely getting some areas to get it look darker. And get you that like texture you want. So like I might even come in with the black here and dry brush some of that. So if we see, I can go in and I could just start getting some of those edges. So then we get some more definition, some different soot looking. Like we can put it on different areas here to really darken it, some areas. Like we can just push it as far as you want to. So if I want to get it dark underneath his chin, so maybe I want to do a dry brush over his mouth, get that edge looking a little more highlighted, see? Get some of that. And there we go. Now, the very last thing that I wanted to do that I just think would put it over the top, I want to get some rub and buff. And let me get my... All I'm going to do is this. So you might be wondering what I'm going to be using Rub and Buff. Jamie Lee Curtis. Yes, Dennis. That's it. God, that's such a good movie. All right, so I got just a little bit on my brush. And if you've heard me ever use Rub and Buff, I've always say it, a little bit goes a long way. So I'm just going to these buttons, even though in the cartoon he didn't have gold buttons or any buttons on his outfit. I'm going to paint these gold. Now I could use a metallic paint if I wanted to, but something has to be said for Rub and Buff. I mean, it gets such a beautiful coverage, and it doesn't take a whole lot. So if you use made their own Rub and Buff, that would be interesting because this is like a wax. I've never heard of anybody making their own Rub and Buff. I don't know. The only person I would refer to is Corpse Starch. I don't know if you're still on, but if you know anything about that. Are you aware of that? Gilding wax? Wax paint? That might be kind of fun to try. And there we go. I messed up the button a little bit right there, but I'm not going to go back over and try to fix it. This brush isn't the best. I need to get me some new brushes just for Rub and Buff. That's okay. There we go. Yeah, you can see on the bottom I got a little close to the edge and it bled over. But you know, it is what it is. I'm not too upset by it. Still a fun paint. Mistakes happen. You can either accept them or start over. It isn't fun to paint. Ooh. All right, so let's go back one more time and see if we can finish out the yellow. Where did my brush go? There it went. Okay. Let's do one more pass of this yellow because I feel like one more pass is going to be it. Then we can get the red eyes and call it done for the night. Heck yeah. I think this is my first like real Christmas thing I've ever painted. I've done gifts for people, but never made like a Christmas themed paint job. It's just reminding me now that I got to finish Christmas shopping. I don't know if anybody else is completely done or if you guys are procrastinators and wait until the very last second. Yeah, look at that. Man, this paint is great. It's nearly done. I'll just add a little more than I want to add. There we go. Okay, so now the last step is the red. The reds of the eyes. So his eyes are pretty bright red. So I am going to use this golden light or red light. Let me open it. Okay. Well, I got way too much that I need, but oh well. And let me hit this with the hairdryer real quick. Okay. It's dry enough. We're in the rush mode now. We're going to finish this. I'm determined. So, let's go ahead, grab some of this red, put on my glasses so I can see real good. And I am just going to drop it in here. Just kind of let it flow. Yes. All right. There we go. All right. So, Kayla, welcome. So I'm new here and just bought my first 3D printer for an early Christmas and birthday gift for myself. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy Birthday. I wanted to thank you for making so many good Sketcher videos. They've helped me a lot. Oh, good. I'm so glad. And I'm so glad you're in the hobby. It's a fun hobby to have, especially that you can turn a bright red print into something like this. So there we go. So also, Kayla, in the description of the video, I got the link to my Discord, the free Discord. You can join that if you ever have questions. You can reach out. There's a bunch of people in there that are awesome at 3D printing and always willing to help. So, time for D&D. Gonna lurk. All right. Well, thanks, Corpse Starch. All right. Well, I'm going to call this done for this live stream because we started from a black model to this. I didn't finish this bottom part just because it's been over 2 hours. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this and had fun chatting with me and painting along. I guess before we end it, Dennis, do you want to send me a picture of where you're at since you were painting along? I'll share it with the group and everybody in here. And does anybody else have any last questions or comments or anything like that? Excellent. All right. So for those of you that don't know, I posted this in my community tab on YouTube and in my Discord for everybody to print this if they wanted to paint along. Dennis has been painting along with me, and he's been making really good progress. See where he's at after 2 hours and 20 minutes. We went 20 minutes over. Still didn't finish it, but I was super happy with how he turned out. Tell you what, that yellow, that made it. I like that yellow and red mixture. Now I just need those eyes to dry. All right. Tried to keep up. Well, I told you I might paint a little faster. And I was also rushing myself. All right. So Dennis just sent me some updated pictures, and I'll share it with the group here, or everybody watching. All right, here we go. Let me share it. Heck yeah. That looks really good. For 2 hours, heck of a job. And you were mixing a lot of your paints too. Like I was using pre-mixed paints. So that looks really good. Great job, man. Great job. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. The last thing is I've got a link to my Etsy store. So, like, if you guys want to get some of these, like textured paint palettes or any of these, like, paint logs and stuff like that that I was showing you earlier, you can grab them there. And also, I got a link down below for the Discord that you guys can join, and a link to my Patreon to get full access to the Discord. All right, Dennis. Yeah, this is awesome. You were one of the ones that suggested it. Kayla says I will say I can't paint till my paints and brushes, so I can work on my Albert Workster from Resident Evil. Oh, cool. All right. Well, you'll have to share some pictures when you get it. Well, we will. I'll see you guys all in the Discord. I'll be posting pictures there. And I'm sure Dennis will post pictures of his when he finishes his too. But thanks a lot for joining. And I will see you guys later. Now that we got a nice big mess here, I'll clean this up and see you guys later. Thanks a lot. Bye.